Good morning, explorers. And if it's not morning for you, then good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Today we are taking a look at the closed beta for New World, the upcoming MMORPG from Amazon Game Studios. I first heard about New World a couple years ago when they released their announcement trailer, and was immediately interested in the game. Over time, after seeing some in-game footage from it and seeing the amount of changes they went through in the game, I lost my interest pretty quickly and stopped following it. But once I saw the closed beta was coming up, I decided to check out the game. The closed beta is the first that I have played the game, so all the opinions that I have are purely based off of the closed beta, and I don't have any previous iterations to compare it to. The short version, for anyone that's not interested in watching the entire video, is that I was very pleasantly surprised by New World and had an absolute blast during the closed beta. The game is by no means perfect, there were definitely some performance issues and a few bugs along the way. But this is the first MMO to launch in recent memory that I am genuinely excited about, and it really gave me the vibes and the feel of older MMORPGs, where everything wasn't about moving from quest hub to quest hub, and was more about your experience in the game world, and about taking it slow and enjoying the journey. That's my quick summary of my opinion on the game, but we are going to get into a little bit more detail in this video. We're going to be looking at some different parts of the game and their core systems, and we're going to try to look at them relatively quickly. I do plan to go into more detail in the weeks before launch into some of their current systems so you can get a better understanding of what the game looks like right now in its current state, since it's been through so many changes and alterations through time. The first area I want to talk about is their movement and their environment. One of the first things you're going to notice in a game is how your character moves. New World's running and movement animations are nothing groundbreaking. They're high quality, and they look pretty good in most situations and scenarios, and although I wish the game had an easier way to walk, or a hold key to sprint as opposed to a toggle, I don't really have any large complaints with it. What I will say is New World did a phenomenal job in these small details of the game. Like the fact that if you go prone while you're running, your character will dive forward to the ground instead of just gently laying down. He doesn't cut off his run animation abruptly, but rather does the right animation in the situation to get down to the ground. When you're running up a hill or down a hill, your character reacts accordingly and will adjust the way that they're running to fit the terrain that they're with. It's also awesome to see small details like when you're fighting with a sword and shield. You can gain a shield bash ability, which again is nothing groundbreaking. But a small detail New World has in it is if you do the shield bash ability directly after doing a light attack, your character will continue rolling through their light attack into the shield bash without skipping a beat. The fluid movement in New World, barring any rubber banding or bugs, is very nice. Your character can vault over objects, shifts their body with the terrain, and adjust animations on certain attacks, or things like prone based upon what you're doing in that moment. The movement also never feels linear or hindered when you're moving across the map, because although there are locations on the map that are marked impassable, these are not zone walls. And your character, through enough work and creativity, can actually scale mountain walls if you find ledges to grab onto, and to vault up. New World was also smart to allow you to jump off ledges and to cut across terrain and taking shortcuts by jumping off 5 places. Although I do think we should be taking more fall damage, but I guess there could be a lore reason why we're not taking as much damage, given that we're on a magical island. The impassable areas bring me to the environment. New World does a phenomenal job with their lighting and shadows, and seems to be top of the line with graphics. The other great part about their environment is that almost everything you come across is interactable. Every tree I've seen can be chopped down, almost every bush that you come across can be harvested, and you can go fishing in every area of water I've come across, even small little ponds. A lot of people think New World's environment can be annoying to move through without mounts, but I didn't find this to be the case at all, mainly because I was enjoying the scenery, I was enjoying the journey, and the different things in between, because I wasn't just trying to travel somewhere, I was harvesting and gathering, killing mobs on the way, or exploring a new landmark. There's no doubt that Amazon Game Studios has created a beautiful world here, and I haven't even explored all the zones. The second thing I want to talk about is maybe the most important thing in the game, which is their combat system, and we're going to talk a little bit about their PvP. Overall, I think New World's combat was a blast. I read a lot of things, or heard a lot of things about people talking about stagger being removed from the game, and it not feeling as impactful, and like I said before, I can't really compare this because I didn't play any other stage of the game. But I have no problems or issues with the game's combat in its current form. The combat feels like Elder Scrolls Online, but done right. All the problems I have with Elder Scrolls Online, like light attack weaving, animation canceling, and no cooldowns on abilities, are eliminated in New World. Your light and heavy attacks actually matter in New World because all of your abilities have cooldowns. That means if someone dodges one of your heavy hitting abilities, you can't just spam it again, and you actually have to rely on your timing with your regular attacks. It actually makes your light and heavy attacks more dangerous and useful because they're your only constant form of damage. I also enjoy their dodge system along with their blocking system, and although they give a different dodge to the different weight classes, heavy armor having a slow dodge is actually not at a weak state, since their dodge kind of ducks under different projectiles and weapons. When you begin out the game, shields can kind of seem overpowered because they can block large amounts of damage, but as you progress and do some PvP, you begin to realize the give and take of the shield when you go against warhammers or great axes that can really crush through your stamina when you're blocking them, giving you a reason even as a heavy armor tank to dodge every now and then. New World's combat and their weapon system was so entertaining for me that I just couldn't decide on a weapon. I went through multiple iterations, multiple specs and styles, and I couldn't figure out which ones I liked the most. The only two weapons I never used were the Life Staff or the Warhammer, since I knew that these two were nothing like my style. And I didn't use the Fire Staff or the Ice Gauntlet for very long, because magic is not really my thing. But the other 7 weapons are all pretty equal in their level, because they were all enjoyable to use in their own avenues. We're not going to dive into this video and what all of them do and how they differ, but their functionality and their utility is very different between each weapon, and they made them all have a very good and unique feel. Now I do want to talk about PvP a little bit. I will say I didn't get to participate in any of the 50-on-50 wars or large-scale PvP, so I won't be commenting on those since I don't have any first-hand experience. I did, however, do quite a bit of open-world, small-scale PvP, and had fun in it. New World has done a pretty good job incentivizing players to jump into the PvP and flag up, and although I will always maintain that a flagged PvP system is a terrible idea, New World has done the best job I've seen of making it viable. They do try to give you some incentive to flag up and get involved in your territory by attempting to create some connection to your home base in terms of territory standing, cheaper fast travel to your factored cities, and other things like this. In terms of the actual PvP combat itself, I think it has a pretty good feel to it. There are some complaints about PvP scaling being in the game, but I believe this is the only way to operate a PvP game in general. Armor and gear should never really matter in PvP because most people who are serious about PvP enjoy the competition of going against another player. That competition is not fun in any way if you are simply destroying the other player because you outclass them in gear. Anyone who wants their gear to factor into PvP as opposed to player skill is more interested in ganking or griefing low-level players. In all the times I did some small-scale PvP, I felt like I had a shot in it. Whether it was one-on-one with level 40 while I was level 20, or it was one-on-2 or one-on-3. For a moment, if I can move right, dodge correctly, and use my skills properly, I felt like I had a shot to take out one of them or even win. The fights are not so quick to not give you a chance to react when someone jumps you by surprise, but the nice part is that they don't linger on forever. There seems to be a good balance between damage output and player skill. The third thing that we're going to talk about is crafting and harvesting. We already talked about it a little bit in the environment, but almost everything that you see out in the game world can be harvested. This is very nice from a harvester standpoint when you don't have to fight over resource nodes with other players. This can be very annoying, especially if there are any bots in the game taking up important valuable nodes. Wood is in plenty, stone and boulders are everywhere you can see, and there's almost always something to be harvesting if that's what you like to do. New World is not the type of game with a player-ran economy that can allow or function with resource nodes for each player and everyone being allowed to harvest every resource themselves. The markets would be overloaded and there would be iron everywhere. So I will say I think they balanced it very well, allowing the basic things like stone and wood to be harvested all over, but making iron a little bit more rare and important to grab once you see it. If you're interested in gathering a lot in the game and doing that the majority of the time, you will always be able to get your hands on something. However, the more important nodes and the more important resources are a little harder to find and will take some skill, level, and timing to get your hands on, but they will be more worth it in the end when you get them. New World's crafting system is somewhat simple and is just about the click of a button, much like a lot of MMOs these days. I do appreciate the fact that New World made their mass crafting not go item by item. If I was going to craft 100 iron, it's just a click of a button, and it builds it just as fast as 1 iron. It makes it a lot less tedious to build large amounts of crafting resources after I already went through and harvested them all. New World also locks certain crafting recipes and levels behind the level of the crafting station, which is primarily controlled by your zone's current faction and controlling company. This makes it important to find a home city and try and help build it up. You obviously can travel across to a city that has the tier of crafting station you need to use at the moment, but due to the lack of mounts and travel time, that can be tedious. So it does give a sense that you have a home in New World, especially if you're interested in crafting to the high levels, and that you want to invest in it and build it up to make it nice. The fourth thing I want to talk about in New World was the overall performance and then the menus and UI. The performance section of this will be somewhat quick, because clearly everyone is going to deal with different issues, depending on how powerful their computer is, and what their setup is like. Overall, I did not have a lot of problems with New World. You dealt with the standard jankiness and rubber banding you can expect from any brand new game, and after a couple days in the game, most of that even went away for me and ran pretty smooth. Towards the end of the beta, I did deal with a lot of lag issues, and a ton of rubber banding to the point that it may not have been playable, but I had trouble determining if this was completely on Amazon Game Studios or if it was my internet giving me problems those nights, since I live out in the middle of nowhere. All in all, I clearly dealt with some jumping around in PvP, some rubber banding, a little bit of lag here and there, but I was pleasantly surprised throughout the entire beta as a whole of how the connection was and how well their servers ran, especially given that this is clearly the most players they've had on at any given time. In terms of the game's UI and menus, they have a nice clean UI. I like that they went with no minimap, and they relegated everything to your compass. I think their quest tracking system is one of the best I've seen, and it's very fluid, and I love the way the quest name highlights in yellow whenever you're in the area to complete it. I am somebody who does not like contextual fading on UI, which is an option in New World, so I unchecked all of those things and displayed my weapons constantly. Even with having both my weapons on the screen constantly, it's not over cluttered or too big. They keep it nice and tight in the corner, and they keep everything off the center of your screen, giving you a large viewing area. The chat box is the thing that I will say I found the most weird. They space out everyone's dialogue, so it takes up more room than you're used to a chat box taking up, and they also place the player's name after whatever they said, which is reversed from every other MMO I've ever played. Normally it displays player name and then the message after it. Although this was jarring to me at first and I actually really disliked it, I became accustomed to it over the 2 weeks, and now I might be thinking that I actually like it more than other MMOs, but I'm not entirely sure on that yet. Nobody likes change. The final area that I want to talk about in this video is New World's questing and progression. I did get up to level 23 in the game with just over 40 hours of play, and I had to keep reminding myself that this is a beta, I need to stop playing it. But I had a ton of fun, so that was difficult to do. Overall, clearly I didn't progress very far in the game, only getting to level 23. However, I mostly play at a slower rate than other players and like to enjoy the journey. I did not pay attention at all in the beta to their main story quest or the story to any of the side missions or faction quests, since I didn't want to spoil anything for launch. But I will say that the questing system doesn't seem like anything new. It is the basic fetch or kill quest, with you going out to loot chests or kill monsters. I'm not expecting anything brand new in the genre from New World, and this was not a surprise to me. Questing in MMORPGs is kind of always the same, and you can't really differ or vary from it like you could with a single player RPG because you have to make it for the masses and for a lot of players. All in all, the questing system seemed to perform just fine, and like I said before, I do quite enjoy their quest tracking mechanics. None of the quests caught me as particularly boring or cumbersome since I enjoyed the world itself, and I enjoyed the journey to get to different locations and the combat in general. It felt like it operated well, and again, I enjoy the fact that New World takes you back to the older MMORPG styles, where it's not about the quest or being handheld and showed what to do, but rather about enjoying the world itself and the journey that you're on, along with the combat, maybe a little bit of grinding. In terms of progression, I think grinding played a big role into it and was kind of refreshing to see. You can do town board missions, for example, or quest, harvesting, gathering to gain experience and level up your character. But doing all of these things does not level your weapons in any way. Turning in quests does not give you experience to your weapons. The only way to level up your weapons is combat itself. This made it to where grinding was an actual option in this game, which is something that has kind of been pushed to the side in every recent MMO. I actually had a reason to go out and fight in one location over and over with the same mobs just to level up my weapon mastery as opposed to running a quest over and over. Because if I'm in the same spot killing mobs, instead of running back and forth, I would actually get more to my weapons and get it at a faster rate, although the experience for my level would be a little bit slower. It was nice to be given these options and actually have a reason for it and not feel like I was lagging behind. Your weapon mastery is something that's incredibly important in the game, and the passives and activatable abilities in the trees make a huge difference. I feel like New World is a little bit harder to level than other MMORPGs that I've played in, which is a nice refreshing pace. When I leveled from 22 to 23, it was actually kind of a nice moment because I had been 22 for quite a while. This also makes it to where loot that you get matters more because you're wearing it longer. In games like Final Fantasy XIV, the items and gear you're wearing don't really matter much because I level through the game so fast with the main story quest that I'll be in the next set of gear before I know it. I don't really care what I'm wearing, what the stats are, or how it performs or looks because I'm moving on to the next stuff in no time. In New World, it actually mattered what I was using and wearing because I was in it for longer. It was a refreshing change of pace and a nice thing to see that they took the leveling journey just a bit slower, at least in my opinion. And I'll be honest, at most times, I didn't remember what level I was because that's not really what the game was about. Like I said before, you're able to PvP people higher than you due to the scaling. You're able to take on mobs higher than you if you dodge well enough. And I wasn't leveling to try and get to any particular point for any particular reason. I was simply enjoying playing the game. If I wanted to harvest or gather, I would. If I wanted to craft, that was fine. And if I wanted to go increase my weapon mastery, that was independent of my level, and they weren't necessarily tied together. Leveling my weapons had a good purpose to it and made me actually good with it, regardless of what level I was. It was more of just taking the game at my speed and doing whatever I saw fit, enjoying the world around me, and having fun. All in all, the game is not perfect. It dealt with some bugs, some glitches, and obviously it is not necessarily groundbreaking to the MMO genre. But it was incredibly fun. I think they did a really good job capturing that classic MMORPG feel, and I will 100% be playing it when it launches. There are a ton of things that you can complain about in this game, but there are also a ton of things I could complain about with Final Fantasy XIV, which is without a doubt the best MMO out right now. But if you are looking for something that kind of brings back the old MMORPG feels, and might just get you to enjoy a game world and the relaxation of gaming itself, then New World could be it. For anyone having problems with the game, like the lack of mounts or the lack of stagger, things like that, keep in mind that games change over time. Guild Wars 2 didn't have mounts for the first 4 or 5 years it was out, and then they released Path of Fire and put in the best mounts of any game that I've seen. Final Fantasy XIV was dead on arrival and had to be completely revamped and relaunched, and now here they are as the best MMORPG there is. If you don't like something about a video game, but it's pretty good all in all outside of that, those things can change over time. That being said, Arcade ruined their whole game with their trade pack changes, and Star Wars Galaxies completely decimated their own game. So sometimes companies make changes that are good and can get a game looking better, sometimes they can ruin it. Only time will tell what Amazon Studios does with New World. All in all, I'll be playing it come August 31st. Hopefully this video was entertaining for you and gave you some of the information that you were looking for to see if the game is for you. Thanks for watching, I will see you next time.